afternoon. Welcome back to Football League World TV. Time for another episode of the EFL Transfer Zone. I'm your host, George Dagless, sitting in for Sam Rourke this afternoon, and joining me is Ned Holmes and Chris Gallagher. Ned, how are you?
Yeah, all good, mate. Looking forward to sort of getting my teeth sort of stuck into some transfer, some rumours, some news, and some done deals as well.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. Chris, how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, preparing for a busy few days ahead, I think.
Good stuff. Yeah, closing in on that deadline. People, wherever you watch from, do get in touch. Let us know, what does your team need before the deadline next week, or across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter for the next 20 or so minutes. We're going to talk about 7 transfer rumours and done deals in the next few minutes. Let's get straight into it. We'll start with a done deal. Dion Sanderson has joined Queen's Park Rangers on loan from Wolverhampton Wanderers. Ned, let's come to you first of all with this one. You've seen a lot of QPR so far this year in the Sky Bet Championship. Is this a signing that was needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think what was clear throughout the month, and Mark Warburton made no secret about it, is that he wanted to strengthen the backline. He wanted to add a centre back, and they've done that, I think, by landing a really, really exciting young player who I think really could be playing Premier League football. I really do think he's that good. He was excellent at Birmingham City and Sunderland, and even Cardiff City before that. I think if you look at their backline, that obviously the likes of Rob Dickey, a really exciting young player, Jordy Device, Jimmy Dunn, Yohan Barbe, are all certainly good defenders in their own right. But they have conceded a lot of chances and a fair amount of goals this season, and it's a long campaign, and I think the important thing really for QPR is that the teams around them have been tooling up throughout January to sort of boost their promotion push, and it's important that they did the same, and landing Sanderson probably improves their starting 11, but it certainly improves their squad.
Do you think? You look at the back three that QPR have got, it looks like it's sort of Dunn, Barbe and Dickey at the moment, at least. Ned, do you think Sanderson's got it in though, to break into that team and then stay there?
I certainly think he's good enough. I think he, as a complete defender, I think he would be one of the best, if not the best, defender in the squad. It's going to be interesting to see, I think, where Mark Warburton's loyalty lies. I know Jordy Device is close to a return back in training, I think now. Jimmy Dunn has been excellent recently, but he's a sort of more traditional style centre-back, if you will. And then Yohan Barbe is sort of the opposite. Brilliant with the ball at his feet, loves to get forward. Some question marks about his defensive work. It's going to be an interesting one to see where he slots in, certainly, but perhaps his versatility as being able to work as a right wing back as well might come into play as well.
Chris, from a Wolves perspective, this is probably a good move as well, isn't it? You look at Sanderson on loan at Birmingham earlier on in the season, but now he gets the chance to play, well, ideally play regularly for a team that's at the right end of the Championship.
Yeah, exactly. I think obviously the main priority when you send a player out on loan is game time. And as Ned touched on, it will be quite difficult for Sanderson. He has got the quality, but it's maybe at first it's going to be, you'll have to show patience. But once you do get in, to have a player competing at the top end of the Championship is exactly what they'll want. It's not just, it's the pressure as well that comes with these games towards the end of the season. That's it's a different test for the individuals, especially for a young player. So when he's been thrown into these, there could be some massive games, especially it could be a playoff final, semi-final, even just top 2 isn't ruled out. So to put him in that environment, I'd say is exactly what they want, and it'll be a test of him, his mental strength as well as his performances on the pitch, because it's something he has been involved in. He tried to get Sunderland promoted, but he was injured, I think, towards the end of the season. So this will be a big challenge for him, and it'll be good to see how he copes.
Certainly will be a good challenge for him. He's a player that's already impressed in the EFL, perhaps at lower levels, obviously with Sunderland as well. Liam's got in touch on YouTube. Sanderson's a great signing for QPR. They've got lots of depth now. Getting in touch on YouTube. Also, EFL Lover says that no harm in adding more depth to QPR's defence, especially when they play three centre backs out the back, which they do. Yeah, Dion Sanderson looks like a potentially very good signer for QPR. Keep those comments in as well. YouTube, Facebook and Twitter across for the next probably 15 or so minutes. Least, that's Dion Sanderson that's joined QPR on a loan deal from Wolves for the rest of the season. Up next, we're going to talk Lyle Taylor's future, and Steve Cooper has effectively said that he's going to be leaving Nottingham Forest in the very near future. Now, Chris, it looks like he could be linking up with former manager at Charlton, Lee Bowyer. Obviously, they worked together at the Valley, achieved promotion from League One a few years ago now. What do you make of this potential deal for a Birmingham perspective?
I think it's decent. It's not one that's going to really excite the fans because they maybe want a different type of player. When you've got Jukovic and Dina, you maybe want some more pace in behind, and maybe a younger player. But Taylor still, he knows how to score, and they're actually just short on options at the minute with Dina out. They let Aniko go back to Charlton as well. So yeah, it was about, they did bring in Ernal Hernandez, who's been playing centrally, but he's maybe better from wide. So they just needed a number, and they didn't lose last night, obviously, which is important to keep the gap to the bottom three, but they'd have been probably nervously looking over their shoulder. So this is a signing that should help them over the line over the next few months. It's not a great addition. It's not one that's going to make everyone take note, but he can score goals even though he has struggled at Forest.
Are you surprised how it's gone for him at Forest, Chris? I mean, when he was leaving Charlton, he obviously, it's interpreted differently how his time at the Valley ended, but he obviously didn't want to play towards the end of that season for fear of getting an injury and ruining a chance of a move, which ended up being to the City ground. But it's not really worked a massive deal for him, has it?
No, I think at the time, everyone it looked a great signing on paper, but yeah, it hasn't. As you mentioned, you've got Lewis Grabban there as well, and the change of managers didn't help, or Cuton as well. A lot went on at Forest, so you don't want to just solely say it's down to the player. Like sometimes off-field issues do play, and the setup at Forest didn't seem a healthy one before. But yeah, it did look a good signing on paper, but it's one of those that just hasn't really worked out.
Ned, obviously, he's could be on course to linking up with Lee Bowyer, who he worked with before at Charlton. And you might argue that Taylor perhaps enjoyed the best days of his career under Bowyer. In the Championship at Charlton, he scored over 10 goals, which is a pretty good return given how the Addicts obviously ended up getting relegated that season. Do you think he can rediscover that form at St Andrews if he moves there?
You'd have to hope so. I think Lyle Taylor was actually the first signing of Lee Bowyer's management career when he joined in June 2018. 35 goals, 14 assists. He went on to score in about sort of 60 odd games for Charlton. That's a fantastic record. And as you say, I would, arguably the best footballer of his career. And it shocked me at first, I guess, to see the links, given the way things ended there. But clearly, Bowyer doesn't. There's no sort of negativity from Bowyer's side of things, and you would think, linking back up with the manager under which he played really the best football of his career could have a regenerative effect for not just Taylor but for the Blues as well. As Chris says, I guess his skill set is perhaps not exactly what Birmingham fans might have been hoping for, but if he can start scoring goals again, that's clearly going to help sort of steady the ship at St Andrews.
Birmingham's certainly in need of goals at the moment, down at the wrong end of the Championship table. A couple of comments on that one as well. EFL Lover on YouTube again says Lyle Taylor does seem to work well under Bowyer. Did well at Charlton, but does go on to make a pretty good point actually that Chuks Aniko worked well under Bowyer at Charlton, but obviously didn't work out at Birmingham. Aniko back at the Valley now. That was confirmed earlier on this month. As for JC Football, he's got in touch as well on YouTube. Not too sure about the Blues transfer policy. Craig Gardner said that last week they were looking at 19 to 24-year-olds. Now Bowyer said we're working on a one-in, one-out system, and obviously Taylor is a player that's a little bit older than that age bracket of 19 to 24. We'll see what happens there though, but he is looking quite likely to be leaving the City ground, Lyle Taylor, and bringing his time there to an end. Could potentially be moving from East Midlands to West Midlands and joining Birmingham City. Up next, we're going to talk Keane Lewis Potter at Hull City. Tottenham are reportedly preparing a big money move for the player. Chris, this is something you wrote about earlier on today. What do you make of this one? Obviously, he's a very good player and a very talented Hull City player, one they'd want to try and keep, but I guess it's to be expected that Premier League clubs are starting to come calling, and Spurs are one of them.
Yeah, I think especially with Hull, you just have to look at how Jared Bowen's done since moving to West Ham, and that's going to be the fear for Premier League clubs. They don't want to miss out on the next one. And I know the comparison to Bowen is lazy, but it's an easy one because he's coming from Hull. But yeah, he's a good player, so it's no surprise to see the interest. Maybe a bit surprising to see Tottenham because of Antonio Conte. It's about the here and now. He's not building a side for the future. He wants a team that's going to be able to compete to get them into the Champions League. And Lewis Potter would obviously be a long-term addition. So I would have a few reservations about moving to Spurs on that front. But yeah, I think in terms of Premier League interest, it's no surprise. And Hull are going to have a battle to keep him because of the contract. I think he's in his last 18 months. And whilst the new owner's not going to want to start off by selling one of the best players, sometimes your hands forced if a new deal can't be agreed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
EFL Lover on YouTube. KLP is an absolute baller. Forget he's only 20 sometimes. It is easy to forget that, isn't it, Ned? He's a player that's been around for a little while now, but he's still very young, and that's obviously why Spurs are looking for him or looking at him. Do you think there's a potential risk in heading to Tottenham though? I mean, you look at Jack Clark, for example. Obviously, Spurs snapped him up from Leeds United when he was having a great time there, and now he's heading out on loan again. He's at Sunderland. So is there a little bit of a risk linked with this one?
Yeah, I think that there's always a little bit of a risk when you're really comfortable somewhere and you're thriving there to sort of up sticks and move to a bigger club where you're really just sort of you're going from being excuse the sort of lazy analogy, but for the big fish in a small pond to a small fish in an absolutely massive pond. I think for every Jack Clark, you could argue that Sessegnon has now found himself establishing a fairly strong place in that Tottenham side. Whether things have obviously not gone the way Sessegnon probably would have wanted since he joined, but he now finds himself with a great opportunity under Conte. I think Chris has made a really solid point with the Antonio Conte sort of situation. I can't imagine this one's going to be cheap. I think he only signed a new contract earlier this month, didn't he? That there's new Hull owners, and surely the first thing they're not going to want the first thing they do is to come in and cash in on sort of one of their best young players cheaply. I guess the loan back aspect makes it appealing for Hull, but I don't know. This one seems a little bit strange to me, and I think you're right. In terms of Lewis Potter, what he needs really is to continue this regular football, and if he wants to sort of follow in the footsteps of Jared Bowen to make that comparison again, then sort of regular football and proving that you can sort of carry your team offensively is what he needs to do.
Yeah, it is reported that as part of the deal that Tottenham are trying to put together, he would be loaned back to Hull, which, as you mentioned, Ed, could be the right way to go. The likes of West Ham, Brentford and Leicester also keen on him. Harry's got in touch on YouTube. Says Lewis Potter will cut it in the Premier League for him. Would be a good sign for Spurs. Certainly an exciting player. Certainly one to watch. I think it's probably fair to say he's going to be a Premier League player at some point in the near future. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Up next, we're going to talk Andy Carroll. He said that he would be open to a move to West Bromwich Albion if talks present themselves. This has come around since the injury news to Daryl Dike is out for around 8 weeks with a fitness problem. Chris, let's come to you first of all on this one. What have you made of Andy Carroll's time at Reading? And do you think if he ended up at West Brom, he'd be a decent signing for him?
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised. He did a lot better than I thought. The main issue with Carroll, actually, to be fair, is the fitness, isn't it? And he managed to stay fit for a run of games, and he scored a few goals, and he's unlucky with a few excellent disallowed ones as well. But yeah, he was a threat. He was a good player. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see West Brom are keen on him. Like, you got to feel sorry for them the way it's worked out with DK. There was a lot of excitement about his signing, and then he injures himself in his first start. So they spent the budget on him. So you can't expect them to just go out and sign another player when he's only out for 2 months. So they have to look for short-term options. So I think Carroll is as good as they can get, really, in terms of being able to come in for a few months to do a job, and then he'll also be happy competing with DK for the starting spot when he does get back to fitness.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That that it doesn't make sense to sign another long-term striker, given that DK's not going to be out forever, is he? Ned, what do you make of this one? I mean, Andy Carroll, whenever he's signed for a new club, it's always been, if he's fit, he'll be a good signing. At Reading, he remained relatively fit, and as Chris said, scored some decent goals. Some were unfortunately ruled out for offside as well. But what do you make of this if he does end up at West Brom?
I mean, there's part of me that would just absolutely love to see it. You've got to think he'd be a real handful given the amount of balls that Albion sort of pump into the box. I mean, that Darnell Furlong long throw could become an even bigger weapon with big Andy Carroll in there to sort of hopefully scissor kick, but likely head the ball sort of past the keeper. I mean, personally, I think it could work really well as a stopgap, but it remains a risk if you're bringing him in as the only option. Like, if possible, I'd still like them to sign a sort of more dynamic forward on loan as well. I do think it seemed kind of clear that Jordan Hugill doesn't seem in the plans, but West Brom, according to reports, have sort of that they've committed to that financially now. So I think it might, but perhaps they don't want to let him go quite yet until they feel they've got cover in there. But while he has stayed fit at Reading, I do think, Andy Carroll, player with a record of injuries at his age, it would seem a bit of a risk really to sort of go all in on Carroll and then for him to, what if he pulls up injured? I'd like to see Carroll in and perhaps a sort of loan signing as well.
Okay, we'll see what West Brom do with that one. But Andy Carroll reportedly is open to a West Brom move if they make the approach. Another attacking player that's getting a lot of interest in him at the moment is Brennan Johnson. It's been reported today that Brentford have upped their offer in their attempt to sign him. They're also trying to battle against Newcastle United, who are reportedly keen on him too. Ned, where do you think the ideal destination is for Brennan Johnson, or is it remaining at Forest for the time being?
I think it's got to be remaining at Forest for the time being. I mean, it's been, even though I feel like he's a name that we heard a few years ago, it has been a fairly sort of meteoric rise. Every time he's sort of had a challenge, League One with Lincoln, and now in the Championship, he stood up to it, and he does seem to be absolutely thriving at Forest at the moment. But I do think it's only a matter of time before he's in the Premier League. But with the positivity and the good feeling at the City ground and a coach like Steve Cooper, I could certainly see why, from a personal standpoint, he would be keen to sort of stay on at Forest, and it does seem like that's the case at the moment.
Chris, what do you think the best course of action is for Johnson?
Yeah, I think he's got to stay as well. I think from Forest's perspective, they're in now firmly in the hunt to go up. So I know 20 million for a player with 18 months left on his contract is a great deal, but they've got to look that this is their chance. You always hope to be in the mix, but you don't know that you will be. So now that they are there, they've got a lot of momentum under Cooper, and Johnson's flying. So the risk to take what is good money when you could miss out on promotion, I don't think it's worth it. So, and from his perspective, he's playing under a manager who's known to improve younger players, who's given him a chance, and we can see each week that he's getting better. He's making massive contributions all the time. So, yeah, I think everything seems a perfect fit now, and they've got to roll the dice, I think, and wait till the summer. And if they don't go up, they're obviously going to have to sell. And then I think Johnson will be playing in the Premier League next year either way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Another player that looks destined for the Premier League sooner rather than later, a lot like Keane Lewis Potter. Charlie Kirk is who we're going to be talking about next. A player that Charlton Athletic signed not too long ago, and it looked like quite an eye-catching signing from Crewe Alexandra, but it's never really worked out for him, and he looks like he's on the way to Championship side Blackpool. Ned, let's talk Kirk at the Valley first of all. Why do you think it hasn't worked out for him? Hasn't worked out for him at all, really, and it looks like his time there's now coming to an end.
It's a really hard one to pick up. It did seem, but perhaps early on, that he wasn't sort of first choice and in the plans, and perhaps that sort of impacted things. But perhaps it wasn't just getting that run of football and really finding his feet, and then finding himself on the outside. And you don't want to speculate about a player's attitude or anything like that. And I'm sure he's still putting it all in. But often when you find yourself sort of on the outside looking in, it is difficult to find the motivation to fight your way back in. I think the Blackpool moves looks a perfect one for all parties. Obviously, it's been a disastrous spell at Charlton, but we've seen him sort of be a really useful player as a goal scorer and a creator off both flanks of Crewe and loan with an option to buy makes sense, particularly after that Dimitri Mitchell's gone to Hibs. I wouldn't be put off, by what has been a really bad spell at Charlton if I was Blackpool, and I think a fresh start for him and what looks like to Charlton they could get some sort of compensation back for him at the end. I think it's a perfect move after what's been a really forgettable sort of 6 months or so.
I mean, Chris, we've seen Neil Critchley do this before in the transfer window, where he's picked up young players that some have obviously got high profiles anyway, but some of them are perhaps lost their way a little bit, and he's helped turn them round, and obviously to great success at Bloomfield Road. And I guess it speaks volumes as well that despite Kirk's struggles at Charlton, he's actually going to be moving up a division. So how much of a tune do you think Critchley's going to be able to get out of him, providing this all goes through?
Yeah, as you said, it is strange to see a player not wanted and then move up a league. But yeah, I think you made a good point there with the manager. He's another who's got a good background in improving players. And that's what Kirk will be looking to as well. That's the players will know who they're obviously going to be working for. And this is a good opportunity for him to develop under a manager. And I think with Blackpool, they haven't got the finances of the other teams in the league. So they have to be more creative. They have to take a few risks here and there. And then this is one that they'll see as a player who, because when he was at Crewe, he was very highly rated and people thought he could make the step up to the Championship. So yeah, this fits the profile for the type of player they want. And I think, in a year or two, his game could come up on a lot with Blackpool.
Yeah, I must admit myself, when Charlton signed it looked like a very, very good deal for them. This sort of player that they tend to pick up and help develop, but obviously hasn't worked for him. But as we mentioned, Blackpool in a similar mould, and they may be able to have a bit more success with Kirk once this deal goes through. And one final transfer story to talk about, and that involves Jeff Hendrick. Our favourite Newcastle United, Middlesbrough, reportedly keen on a loan signing of the midfielder who turns 30 in just a matter of days' time. Chris, let's come to you first of all on this one. Hendrick is a player that we know can perform at the higher echelons of English football. What do you make of this potential signing from a Borough perspective?
Yeah, I think it'd be a decent signing. I think his form has struggled a lot since he joined Newcastle. He was a lot more effective at Burnley, but I think he was dropping down a level. So you would expect him to be a pretty reliable, good option in the middle of the park. I think Wilder's been backed pretty heavily in this window in terms of they're getting improving players, they're getting good signings, and this would continue that. It's someone who's able to make an instant impact. So it's not a long-term project. This is someone to help them get promoted this year, which is what it's all about. So yeah, I think in that sense, he'd be getting a reliable player. He'd help them, and I'm sure he'd welcome the chance because he's not going to get many opportunities at Newcastle, especially if they complete the business we expect in the next few days. So yeah, it could work for all parties.
Yeah, I mean, Ned, from his personal perspective, this is a great opportunity for him, isn't it? I think he probably knows the writing's sort of on the wall for him at Newcastle, and this is opportunity, to potentially eventually get a permanent move to a club like Middlesbrough. Chris Wilder could be a really good influence for him as well, couldn't he?
Yeah, I think he should really suit Wilder's system well. I think easy to sort of think he's older than he is. A proven quality central midfielder, still just 29, and always been a player that's not short on energy. I do think Wilder needed to strengthen in central midfield this month. There's obviously the forward signings of sort of Aaron Connolly following Gallagher, fantastic signings, but were more reinforcements, in my opinion, were needed in that midfield area, and Hendrick would be exactly that. I think also worth remembering that he has thrived at Championship level in the past. Had some fantastic seasons with Derby County early on in his career, and scored a lot of goals and provided a lot of assists in sort of those seasons. And perhaps he's dropped off a little bit as a creator and a goal scorer in the Premier League. That's perhaps part of what can happen to players at Burnley when you're sort of working so hard on the off the ball stuff. But I do think, Chris Wilder could be exactly the sort of player to sort of get another tune out of him. Obviously, he doesn't have to move far. Newcastle to Borough, probably stays in the same house and everything like that. So that's a real bonus. But yeah, it certainly looks to be one of the casualties of the takeover, and Middlesbrough, the team set to benefit. So that's going to be massive.
Yeah, certainly could be a pretty shrewd move for Middlesbrough before the deadline. That brings the EFL Transfer Zone show to a close for today. Coming up on Football League World TV tomorrow at 10 a.m, we will kick off again with the debate. What are the 3 best EFL stadiums for away fans? I'm sure that's going to spark plenty of discussion. Alfie Burns hosting that one. He's joined by Chris Forbes, Ben Wignall and Billy Mully. 12 o'clock sees the West Brom fan debate. Ned Holmes reporting on that one, hosting that one. He's with Matt from the WBA report. That's how I made that mistake. 2 o'clock is another debate. 3 EFL clubs at 4 days left to save their transfer window. I'll be hosting that one. Toby Wilding is joining me. And then at 4 o'clock, the EFL Transfer Zone is back. Ben Wignall will be in the hot seat for that one. Chris Gallagher is joining him, and so is Billy Mully. But Ned, Chris, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Thanks everyone for sending your comments as well. Great to get your thoughts on some of the transfer deals and rumours that are doing the rounds at the moment. Not long left to go in the transfer window now. There's going to be plenty more shows from us here on Football League World TV. So do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video as well if you can. That'd be greatly appreciated. But from myself, Chris and Ned, it's bye for now.